Oh, start. Vamos a empezar. Y muy buenos días. Very good morning to everybody. I hope you had a good holiday. Sí,
Sí.
Ah, bien.
Muy bueno.
También. We almost got that storm. The Friday, viernes. We almost got that storm. It hit Rio Verde next door to us. Did not hit us. So tempting. Lightning everywhere, but no rain. Oh, well. Bien. Vamos a empezar. El pasado. Everything is about past today, past. And, any questions that you have, feel free to stop me, interrupt me, do anything you need to do. What I want to do is to start to look at some previews, some things about past tense, what they call the preterite. And while imperfecto is always called, en pasado imperfecto or just imperfecto, that other past tense that is used, which I like to call preterito, they're like 4 or 5 different names. I'm like, grammatically, it's always like, ooh, which tense do you mean? And, for me, like, I'm supposed to know all those indefinite, all kinds of stuff, like weird names. So just know that preterito is like probably the most commonly used name. But preterito, this is the event-oriented past. So I want to do some practice with that. We're going to still include some practice with imperfecto. So we're really going to be kind of merging these two because we need to. All stories have to use both imperfecto and preterito. Okay, they have to use these two past tenses because that's the only way you can tell a story in Spanish. It's very, very difficult to avoid them both. You'll never hear a story told only in preterite or only in imperfecto. There's always going to be some element of the two of these seeping into each other, which is why you've got all those little stories to listen to. And I hope to do a little walkthrough on one of those stories, just to kind of do a running translation to show you what it means and why people use it. This provides a really big challenge for people who are English speakers because we kind of do have it, but we don't call it a different kind of tense and it doesn't get a different conjugation. So that's why it's difficult. Okay. Vamos a empezar. I had given you a set, and I think it's going to be kind of explanation time here to start out. Our reasons for using preterito, right? I had given you this set, right, of slides. Yeah, but there may be some explanation involved. Okay. Preterito in Spanish gets different names, labels, tags. That's not important to you. But what's important to know is when we use it and to start to know a few things about it. And I want to start just with one of the most super common verbs that you will see in preterito, and that is this verb ir. Okay, because presente, voy, vas, va, vamos, van. Okay, everybody knows that. And we use that both for present and to cobble together future, talking about the future. I'm going to walk, voy a caminar. Voy a montar en bicicleta. Voy a limpiar la casa. All right. So we use ir in presente, voy, vas, va, vamos, van, for both things going on right now and to talk about what is going to literally happen by using the present. But you do hear ir used a lot in preterito. And while preterite tense in Spanish is by far, hands down, the hardest tense, it is the hardest tense to learn in Spanish. This one is really, really off the charts, weird. Ir in preterito is a very weird form. It starts with an F, and the letter F does not appear anywhere. And F-U, wow, foo. They all start with foo. that doesn't appear anywhere in the infinitive itself of ir. So these just have to be memorized, but you will constantly, if you hear any verb used in preterito, the event oriented past, this is one you'll hear a lot. And remember, we frequently have this tagged on because you say where somebody went. So to say somebody went, for I went, it's fui. Fui. Think of fui in English, but cut the sound short. Fui. Fui. Okay. Fui. The tu form is fuiste. Notice this is very, very wow. I didn't think about this for years and years and years, but just did recently. This is the only tu verb form, the only tense for the tu form that does not have an S at the end. It does not. I'll say more about that at a later class. You know, all the tu forms for the regular, well, all the tu forms get an S at the end, yeah, but not with preterite. Preterite tu, whether they're regular or irregular, no S at the end. So, fuiste, tu fuiste, talking about one person doing, who did it, who went, fue. Fuimos, the mos comes back. We know it's a we form, a nosotros form, fuimos. They just put an is on the end of the fuiste form to get vosotros fuisteis. And then fueron. Oddly enough, ser, to be, and ir, to go, share the exact same preterite form. It is weird. So technically, fui can mean I was. It can also mean I went. You will always know that it means I went because it'll have a tagged onto the end. So context will always tell you. Okay. It's always went when we've got an tagged on there, right? Yeah. Fui a, fuiste a, fue. Fuimos a, fueron a, because we tell where somebody went to. So we always have an there. It's not part of the conjugation. It's just showing you where somebody went. Fuimos a la piscina. We went to the pool. Oh, and here's the but it gets tagged on to the interrogative word. It tags on to the front of donde. ¿A dónde fuiste? Where'd you go? Where did you go? ¿A dónde fuiste? ¿A dónde fuiste? Right? So when do I use these fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron? When do I use preterito instead of the iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, iban of imperfecto? We wind up using ir in preterito a lot. We just do, because most of the time you're talking about where somebody went. So ir, I think you hear more in preterito versus the imperfecto. Imperfecto has a definite reason with ir, but preterito is going to be a lot more common. So preterito always talks about events, what happened, what activities moved the action of the story forward. So this tells you what, like imperfecto has a job. Imperfecto tells descriptions in the past. Imperfecto says somebody was doing something or somebody used to, habitual action. Preterito has a different job. And preterito, this tense is used to always talk about events, something that happened with a definite beginning and an end, or at a specific time, you know, something you can peg to a specific time. You can put it in a neat little box, wrap it up, and you're all done with it. That's preterito. Sometimes we use preterito to talk about something happened a definite number of times. So for example, if somebody says, I did this twice, I did this 3 times. Yeah. Okay, but usually it'll be something that is a definite event, or somebody says, you know, instead of using a tag word like siempre, always, or todos los días, every day, which would be imperfecto, something with preterito might say, oh, I did this at 5 o'clock, a las 5. It might indicate somebody did, oh, I did this yesterday, ayer. You know, so there might be different kinds of time-related tag words, but they will be specify a single day, a single time on the clock. It is more confined. Preterito is very confined in the time when that event happens, okay? Definite beginning, definite end. Not, I used to climb trees when I was a little kid, because used to just means you did it a lot, but I don't know how often. But if you want to say, oh, my grandson climbed the tree last night, my gosh, he scared the bejesus out of me. Well, then that happened last night, and it's preterito. Not he always did it, but he did it at a specific time. That's the job of preterito, right? Preterito has a job of actions that move the story forward. They take you from one event to a different activity to a different activity. So it pushes the action of here's what happened, and now something happened next, and now it tells you sequence. Preterito tells you sequence, what order things happened in. This is first, this is second, this is after that, this is after that. So that's the job that preterito has. It's very limited in time versus imperfecto. Okay, so some verbs, just by virtue of what they mean and nothing else, are likely to be used more in preterito than in imperfecto. Likely. Not 100%. Can't even say 75%. It's just because of what the word means. When you say went, most of the time what we're conveying is an event that happened. And therefore, most of the time, you're going to wind up using preterito. You know, when you say bought, when we use the word bought, we're usually not talking about a habit, you know, and if we do, we'll say something like, I used to buy, you know, my grandpa always used to buy me a balloon when we went to the zoo, used to. You know, English tends to insert that to tell you habit, okay? But, you know, in English, most of the time, if you just mean bought, that's going to wind up being what they call preterito, preterite. The action of ver, see. Usually if we say somebody saw something, we mean, okay, that happened and it's done. So you're going to hear ver more often in preterito than you do the imperfecto, just because of what it means. Decir, most of the time, people will say, oh, he said this, then she said that, and then they said that. It's an event. You will tend to hear decir, to say, to tell, more frequently with preterito if we're talking about the past, okay? And yeah, many more. You know, actually, I could add one to this list. When you say I gave something, you don't usually say I used to give. Oh, you might say, I used to give a charitable donation every year to this group. Then that would be imperfecto, but I gave him this, I gave him that. Usually it's a one and done kind of thing. And one and done means it's got to be preterito. So these kind of verbs here in the past tend to use preterito more. Do they have a conjugation in imperfecto? Yes, they do. Are they used in that? Yes. But percentage-wise, heavier on that preterito thing. So Now, here's a difficult thing about preterito. Ir in preterite is going to be very irregular. You already saw it, the fui, fuiste, fue, all of those. Comprar will be regular. Ver will be, technically it's irregular, but it really shouldn't be. Okay. Decir, very irregular. Dar, very irregular. The bad thing with preterite is that there are a lot of irregular forms in preterite. The reason preterite tense is hard is that while it has regular forms, it has a huge, to be honest, kind of intimidating group of irregulars. And they do very odd things. They have to be memorized and practiced to get used to them because they're not easy to memorize. Just saying. So we're just looking at ir today. We may talk a little about this one if we don't get
Will
time.
you give out stickers or something if we get them memorized?
Oh, yes, I would. Yeah. Preterite is really, it takes, typically like in a high school setting, when you teach preterite, it takes an entire semester. It takes almost an entire semester of work because there's so many irregulars and the kids just have to see many patterns and they have to practice it over and over again. And it is not an easy tense to learn. It is not an easy tense to learn. Okay. So let's take another look. All right. So these kind of things that talk about one and done activities tend to be imperfecto a lot. Some verbs, because they talk about like emotions or feelings, things that you cannot tag to an event easily. They'll wind up being in the imperfecto. With some verbs that talk about emotions or mental activities, with some, and there are caveats with this, but there's sometimes no clear beginning or end. So let me give you an example. If you want to say, I wanted is, depending on how you look at that whole thing of, mental or it's how I felt. It's an emotional thing, wanting. It's a mental thing, wanting. I wanted is that an event? I wanted ice cream. Did that happen and then it was just over? When did I start wanting? When did I finish wanting? I don't know. And if the answer is, I don't know when that started or stopped, it's got to be imperfecto. So certain verbs that fall into this category of emotion or mental activity, certain ones of them, like when we say, I wanted, I could, I used to like, and it's important to say, I used to like, what our preferences were at a certain time in our life, way back when. A lot of these wind up being in imperfecto. Okay, because I could do something. When I was a kid, I liked this or that. They don't have a beginning and end that is well defined. And they're going to wind up being imperfecto. Okay, those ia and ara endings. Whereas these kind of activities are very easy to peg to a beginning and an end. I went someplace and it's done and over. I bought something, it's done and over. I saw something. It's easier to say, oh, this started and ended. Preterito, preterite. Okay. Whereas these kind of verbs that talk about, something emotional or mental, they're not an event. He wanted something that it didn't happen and then it's just all done. We don't know the beginning or end. So I'm just telling you, like, these are kind of the kinds of activities that will tend to go into one camp of preterito versus the other camp of imperfecto. This happens quite a lot. Okay. And this gave you the link to mental and emotional verbs. Okay. Bien. That is kind of a tough one, but we're going to kind of practice with some of these emotion, or yeah, some of these emotion verbs. Okay. We're going to practice some of these because I wanted you to see what a preterite with ir, an odd one, looks like. It's just an odd form. It's not the aba, ia that are easy to peg. But let's do a little bit of practice with the ones that are easy to use in imperfecto. Okay. Just like we had ser going into era, eras, era, éramos, eran. You had tener, tenía, tenías, tenía, teníamos, tenían, imperfecto. We had había for haber, right? All those like common verbs. These kind of verbs are also going to be used in imperfecto. I wanted you to have a taste of how weird preterito preterite can be, but we're going to go back to a few verbs. And the reason I wanted to introduce that preterito bit is that those videos start to mix them all. So you kind of have to have an idea of why do I use preterite and how it's going to come at me and how will it look odd. Okay, so I wanted you to have that framework, especially with ir. But imperfecto still gets lots and lots of verbs that stay with imperfecto and don't go into preterite a lot. So we're going to practice these today. Okay. The I wanted, the I could, and the I liked. I used to like things. So we're going to practice these in imperfecto. And the imperfecto is easy to practice because these are going to use the aba and the ia endings. Okay. They have very few irregulars and they're easy to practice. So, and whenever you want to say somebody wanted something, it's not an event. Not an event. So it will stay in imperfecto most of the time. And querer is going to be, while it is highly irregular in presente, it has those stem changes in the middle, right? Quiero, quiero, quieres, quiere, quieren, right? Imperfecto does not use stem changes ever, not even once. So that IE, the UE, the E to I changes, those don't happen in imperfecto. They're wonderfully, beautifully regular tenses. So querer will change to quería. It'll stick with QUER as the stem will stay the same. We don't stick the I in the middle. We get the ia at the end. So it's quería, I wanted. Querías, you wanted. Quería, he or she wanted. Querían, they wanted. Queríamos, we wanted. Wanted, keep it in imperfecto. You don't have to decide, do I do preterite? Do I do the other? You don't need to decide. When we're talking about the emotional or mental feeling of somebody wanted, it's always going to be imperfecto. Berto quería tomar un café. Berto wanted to have a coffee. Okay. Queríamos ganar más dinero. We wanted to earn more money. It's just going to be imperfecto. Always querer. All right. This verb here, a lot of the time, not 100%, but a lot of the time is going to stay in imperfecto. When you're talking about somebody had the ability to, it's most of the time going to go into imperfecto. There are specific times when poder goes into preterito, but generally Poder in preterito, because preterito is an event-oriented past, poder actually changes its meaning if it's used in preterito. If we want to indicate, so for example, I'll give you just a preview. If somebody, what they really mean is, oh, you know, I meant to clean up the yard. I meant to clean the pool yesterday, but I just didn't manage to get it done. Then they're going to put poder into preterito. Because if I didn't manage to do something, it's telling somebody, uh-oh, this thing here, it was an event. Okay, it didn't happen. I meant for it to happen, but it didn't. It's going to go into preterito. But most of the time, if you want to say, I was able to, I used to be able to do this, I had this ability, it's not talking about a specific task at a point in time, just your ability to do it. I could, I was able to. It's going to stay in imperfecto most of the time. Most of the time you use it. So I'm going to label this at around like maybe a 75%, usually imperfecto. And notice, whereas puedo, again, is a stem changer, an O to UE in presente, we don't have stem changes anymore. So we go back to the original stem of POD and it keeps the O. It doesn't split it off into UE. So muy regular, it's a very regular verb in imperfecto. Podía, I was able. Podías, you were able. Podía, he or she could, was able. Podían, they could, they were able. Podíamos, we were able, we could. Okay. Yo no podía respirar. Wow, I couldn't breathe. Okay. Imperfecto, imperfect. The students couldn't understand. Los estudiantes no podían entender. Again, it kind of goes into a mental ability thing. Yeah. Wasn't able to, it'll stay with imperfecto. Los estudiantes no podían entender. No podían, okay. Mi hijo podía nadar desde muy joven. My son could swim since he was very young. And that doesn't talk about the very first time he ever swam, the very first lesson he ever took. It's just what he used to be able to do. Okay. Podía nadar desde muy joven. Wow. He could swim, going way back to childhood. Okay. So querer, most of the uses you need for querer in the past are imperfecto. Poder, most of the uses you have for poder are in imperfecto. And gustar will, gustar kind of sits on the fence. It's a half and half. It might go into preterito. We'll talk about that another day. But if we talk about what somebody used to like, okay, it will stay with imperfecto. Gustar is used a fair amount in preterito. It is used in preterito, gustar, when somebody wants to indicate somebody's reaction after doing something. Oh, you just finished that book. Did you like it? I liked it. That'll be preterito. You just ate a dish of ice cream with all kinds of goodies piled on top. And the person sitting next to you says, ooh, was that good? Did you like it? That's your reaction after eating it. It's in that, yeah, I liked it. Me gustó. That'll be preterito. But when you talk about what somebody used to like in a very non-specific time frame, not as their immediate reaction, but as, you know, did you like this? You, as in used to like, it will stay as imperfecto. So because imperfecto is so regular, we're going to look at that. But the one hard thing for you to remember is that with gustar. Gustar is an odd verb, right? It looks at the thing that is liked, not who likes it. The who likes it is the little pronoun that comes in front of gustar. All right. So you're only going to wind up with two conjugations for gustar with both imperfecto and preterito. Okay. Because it's me gusta or me gustan, right? Boom. So for past, it will be two forms as well. Gustaba, for one thing was pleasing to me, or an activity maybe was pleasing to me, or gustaban, for plural things, I liked them. Por ejemplo, me gustaban los chocolates. I used to like chocolates. I liked chocolates, you know. I don't know how often I just liked them in general, right? So here are all the forms that gustar will take. And remember, we have to tag on a little extra pronoun with these. The little pronoun tells who liked it, right? But it has nothing to do with the tense. It just tells who liked it. So it'll always be either gustaba, one thing was pleasing to somebody, or gustaban, these things, plural, were pleasing to somebody. That's the way gustar works. It's different than the other verbs, right? So here are the examples for gustar in imperfecto, to say somebody used to like, or we might make a negative, didn't like in the first one. De niño no me gustaban los vegetales. As a kid, I didn't like veggies. That's not a one-time event. I just didn't like vegetables as a kid. I don't know how many times. A lot, just a lot. So when liked in the past means a lot, often, it's imperfecto, like this. Nos gustaba ver las películas en el cine. We liked watching movies in the theater. I don't know how often, just we used to like watching. Okay. Nos gustaba ver. And gustaba is singular because is paired up with ver, an activity. When we say somebody liked doing something, we use an infinitivo, ver in this case, it's got to be gustaba, singular, right? Not we liked movies, but we liked watching movies. So the watching, the ver, is what makes gustaba singular. Nos gustaba ver las películas en el cine, ¿ok? A mis hijos les gustaba el helado. My kids liked ice cream. A lot. Not just after that one plate that somebody ate, but a lot. They used to like that. A mis hijos les gustaba el helado. Another one paired with an activity. Me gustaba esquiar. I liked to ski. I'm not talking about how many times. Who's going to go back and count how many times I skied when I was 20, 30 years old? Nobody's counting. I liked it. I liked it. I did it a number of times. I don't know how many times, but a bunch. Okay. Bien. So gustar may or may not go into preterito, but when it stays in imperfecto, it's really pretty easy to use. It's going to look like these. Okay. Bien.
Bien.
Okay. Vale. So here is when gustar goes into that other event, past tense. Okay. If what I liked was not how I used to feel, but rather how I reacted to something once or at a specific time, it will flip into preterito. Gustó and gustaron. Me gustó. Okay. Oh, me gustó este plato. I liked this dish if you're sitting in a restaurant, right? Okay. Gustó for singular, gustaron for plural. And I do have examples. Yeah. So with gustar, if we're talking about a one-time event, a reaction to one thing that you did, one thing you tasted, one thing you saw, one thing you experienced, right? A once and done thing, then we go into preterito. So did you like the movie? Nah, because you just walked out of the theater, you just turned off the streaming video, whatever it was. ¿Te gustó la película? Did you like that one movie? No, no me gustó mucho. I didn't like it so much. Okay. Then it needs to be preterito because we're not talking about what you used to like, but a thing you specifically watched and I had a meh reaction. Right? No me gustó ese restaurante. I didn't like that restaurant, meaning, wow, I ate there once. Didn't like it so much. All right. Or if you did like it a lot, me gustó. I liked it. But your reaction to doing that thing one time, it's going to be preterito. Okay. ¿Te gustaron estos chocolates? Did you like these chocolates? You bought somebody a great big box with a whole bunch of little chocolates in them, right? ¿Te gustaron estos chocolates? Sí me gustaron. Yeah, wow, I really liked them. Okay. And we're talking about, oh, I got this as a gift, right? As a surprise, and I ate them, and it's a one-time event. Okay. So the one-time event, I got this little box of chocolates. The one-time event, I ate at this one restaurant. The one-time event, I watched this one show. Because they're talking about a one-time event and your reaction to it, they're preterito. Okay. But keep in mind that if we're talking about something that happened a lot, that's no longer a one-time reaction. Then it goes into imperfecto. Does that make sense? ¿Sí?
Sí.
¿Alguna pregunta? Any question about that? Or no? Or not so much? No? Does that make a certain amount of sense? Sí? Bien? Okay. Vale. Bien. Let's do a little practice with this then. And then we'll come back to the videos and kind of review why they mixed tenses, why they did that. I'm trying to find my prompts. A ver. Oh, I forgot I did not have prompts. Okay. I think I asked you to make a list of things that you could do, things you'd like to do. Did I not? Yeah, I did. Okay, that was what my notes said. So I'm going to trust that I actually did that in the email. Okay. Actually, I'm going to take my little notes here. Oops. Perdón. And I'm going to tag on an extra page and I'll send you out. I want you to put this into practice a little bit. And when we come back, we can share your ideas. What we want to do right now is to send you off into smaller groups and to use these 3 verbs just in imperfecto, not in anything else. Using the 3 verbs querer, and I'm typing them in real fast, poder, and gustar, right? And what we want to do is talk about what somebody wanted and create some ideas of your own rather than my examples, because being able to use it is something else, right? Uy, momento. Actually, let me put this on so you will see what you will be seeing when you go into breakout room. And I apologize. I should have organized this a little better. And I'm just going to put the nosotros and the yo form and the nosotros form in because these are, oops, easy to use. Oops, momentito. That did not work.
When I typed in something on my Google Translate that I could do something, it came up with the word podría with an R.
Oh,
You don't have to get into it if it's a rabbit hole. Just a different shade of meaning.
A different shade of meaning is right. So yeah, it isn't a rabbit hole. Podría. Okay, here's the difference. Because English uses the same word. So in English, we'll say,
I said I could mow the yard.
I could mow the yard. I could lift that weight. I could do that, right? I could drive a truck if I had to. Yeah, I could.
Okay.
But when you use could, English does not distinguish. English also uses could to ask something politely. Could you bring me the big pot off the shelf? Yeah. Could you make the beds this morning? I don't have time. That kind of could for polite is podría.
Okay.
And there is a short answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we use the English word could to express, oh, I'm asking somebody to do something politely, that is that word podría. It does come from poder, but it is yet a separate tense that is used for what they call conditional.
Okay.
Yeah, special event kind of stuff. Okay. Bien. Okay. A ver.
Excuse me, Marilyn.
Sí.
I have another question.
Okay.
You touched on this either last week or the week before, but when I put in, I was able to travel in the Spanish translator, I get pude, P-U-D-E.
Okay. Yes. So that P-U-D-E is pronounced pude, but it means, and again, it's kind of like the podría thing of shades of meaning. If, okay, I'm going to use this holiday weekend. You know how a lot of people booked travel flights for 4th of July and they got messed up because some pilots went on strike and a lot of flight cancellations. If you mean I could travel, and what you mean is I could do it, and you know what? I managed to get it done. When it indicates that it really happened at a specific time, then they use that word that is pude, I could, and that is preterito. But it means the action really happened at a specific time and that you managed, it means managed. It means there was a finite boom. So, por ejemplo, I could say, podía viajar, podía viajar. Here's the difference. Podía viajar los veranos. I could travel during the summers. Let's say I'm talking about when I used to teach and I would have summers off. Podía viajar los veranos. I could travel during the summers. It means I did it a lot and I was able, I had that ability. Or, por ejemplo, mis hijos podían montar en bicicleta. My kids could ride a bike. They were able to. They had that ability. That's what podía and podían mean. But if I mean, well, you know what? Last weekend, I managed I managed to get a flight. I managed to travel. And I know in English, it wouldn't be really all that common to say I managed, but that's what we mean, that you actually got it done. Pude viajar. I could travel this weekend. Pude viajar este fin de semana. I could travel this weekend, meaning I managed to get on that plane. That's what the pude means. It means, wow, it happened. I had the ability, and by God, it got done.
Okay.
That's how pude is different. But most of the time, in a general conversation, a regular chit chat between folks, most of the time, people are just talking about what they were able to do, as opposed to, I got this done.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, pude indicates that you actually accomplished something on a specific date or at a specific time. That's what it does. It's kind of unique in that way. Okay. A ver, I'm just getting some of these pasted in here. Yay. All right. Any other questions like that? Because they are good questions. Or no? No? Okay. I'm getting my last little cheat sheets done. Oop, for you to go out into breakout rooms. Game. All right. And I'll show you what this is going to look like. Okay, vamos a ver. I will put this up in the breakout room, this little page right here, because it's going to, in a nutshell, give you those 3 verbs. See? Quiero que ustedes practiquen con estos 3 verbos. I want you guys to practice with these 3 specific verbs. These are 3 verbs that we often frequently see in imperfecto because they indicate either a mental or an emotional kind of activity in the past. Somebody wanted, ed, somebody could, they were able, somebody liked, meaning used to like something. Okay, these are going to be nice regular verbs for imperfecto, right? And what they are going to do is they're going to use most of the time the imperfecto. Yeah. Okay. Here's your little cheat sheet you'll have in the screen. I want everybody to talk about what somebody wanted, either a thing you wanted or a thing you wanted to do, something somebody was able to do, and something that somebody liked to do. But do remember, you've got to pair up the gustar with these little pronouns. So it's got to be a me gustaba, liked one thing, or a me gustaban, plural, liked more than one thing, right? Te gustaba, te gustaban, le gustaba, le gustaban, nos gustaba, nos gustaban, les gustaba, les gustaban. Bien? Okay. Don't forget to pair up your pronoun with that gustar, because that's what you need to do, right? You're not conjugating for gustar for yo or for nosotros. You're conjugating gustar for the thing that was liked, whether it's plural, gustaban, or singular, gustaba. Bien? Make sense? See? I want you to talk about what somebody wanted to do, or wanted a thing they wanted, what they were able to do, or what they used to like. I think I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to get through a few examples, and then we'll come back and share what your examples were. Does that make sense? Sí? Lógico. Bien. Okay. A ver. Somos 9. I think we're going to keep it. Uy, where did my live on YouTube? Why is it? Oh, goodness. I think I forgot to reset one of my settings. Breakout rooms. Let's go with that. Bien, bien, that makes sense. Okay, and when you log in, I will send the screen, the cheat sheet screen out for you. Oops. Bien. Voy a arreglar el reloj. I'm going to regulate my watch here, give everybody about 5 minutes. Un minuto más, one more minute. We'll bring everybody back, compare some examples, see if they had difficulty with any of those examples? And then I think we're going to move on to some explanation of the videos to see how we flip-flop these two tenses. It's a tricky thing to get used to. Okay, we're going to close the rooms and give people a minute to come back. Some people might be finishing up. Some people might have finished up, boom, 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 right on time. Depende, it kind of depends because everybody goes at their own speed and that is a-okay. Okay. Ooh, people must be working hard because I don't have anybody coming back in early yet. Wow. Okay. Bien. Okay.
Todos los veranos.
¿Cómo te fueron? How'd that go for you guys? ¿Sí? Bien?
Sí,
Bien?
bien, sí, sí.
Okay. Magnífico. Unos ejemplos. Let's share some examples of ideas you came up with.
Mi nieto quiere aprender a conducir mi carro.
Oh, mi nieto quería, he wanted. Quería aprender a conducir. He
aprender.
wanted to learn to drive. Ay, ay. Yeah,
We are.
es difícil. That's a tough one. Okay. Buen ejemplo. ¿Qué más?
Me gustaba viajar mucho, pero ahora no podía porque COVID.
Bien, bien, bien. Perfecto, perfecto. Bien. Okay, because remember, could, like, these are not like one-time events. This is when they're not one-time events, so always imperfecto. Bueno, muy bien, Mark. Otros ejemplos.
Mi padre podía volar un avión.
Bueno, excelente. Could fly. Was able to do that. He had that ability, right? Not he managed to do it once. This is something he did a lot, right? Sí, podía. He was able to do that. Excelente. Algo más. Any other examples that you'd like to share or had a question about?
Yeah, I think I want to give you my sentence where I got the PUDE, the pude.
Okay, there you go.
Try to figure this one out. So I have pude viajar a 18 estados mientras trabajaba.
Okay, so if what you really managed was, or if what you really meant was, I managed to do this, but you said while you worked, which was a good thing, Mary. And this is an excellent question, Mary. Es buena pregunta. What a good question. Mientras trabajaba, while I was working, meaning when I before I was retired, right? Mientras trabajaba, while I was working in that, and that was over a bunch of years, wasn't it? Okay. But if what you really mean was, I was able to travel. Oh, all those years I was working, I was able to travel a lot. It's podía viajar. Podía viajar mientras trabajaba.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the difference. Here's the pude, Mary. Pude is going to be much more limited in time. So if you're talking about while you worked, you did that a bunch of times. I don't know how often you travel, just a lot, right? Some people travel all the time for work. So podía viajar mientras trabajaba. I could travel while I was working. Okay, but, por ejemplo, pude viajar este fin de semana. Pude viajar este fin de semana. No tenía problemas con los vuelos cancelados. I managed to fly this weekend. I didn't have any of those cancellations. That's the difference.
Okay.
If I'm talking about a specific time period, yeah, a certain day, a certain month, something specific, pude might be correct. But while I was working means you did it a bunch of times in the course of your job for a bunch of months, bunch of years. So we're going to keep that imperfecto.
Okay.
Podía viajar. Buen ejemplo. It's a really good example. Okay. Whereas Trish had an example of una persona podía volar. A person could fly, meaning they had that ability. That happened a bunch of times because they could. Not that he managed to get up in a plane one time and land it without crashing, right? But that he was able to do that a lot. That's the difference. English doesn't do such a good job of distinguishing between those with a tense, a verb tense, but Spanish really does. Okay. Buen ejemplo, Mary. I'm glad you asked that question. Okay. ¿Qué más? ¿Qué otros ejemplos? What other examples did you have that worked out well? I'm going to give you an example, one little example. Okay. Pude. Here's the difference again, using poder. Pude, yo pude, I could. I managed. Yo pude hacer un pastel de fresas. Pude hacer un pastel de fresas. I managed
Make a cake.
to make a strawberry pie. And I managed, now by my putting in pude,
You
it
could.
means I got that done. I probably mean recently. It would be more helpful if I put in some time marker like el sábado, right? El sábado pude hacer un pastel de fresas, right? But if I just changed it from pude to imperfecto podía, it means I was able to, and I did this a bunch of times, not a certain day. I'm not talking about what got accomplished, but that I had the ability, that this was one of my special recipes. Podía hacer por ejemplo, mi abuela podía hacer un pastel fantástico. My grandma could make, she did it a lot. Podía hacer pasteles fantásticos. She could make great goodies, yeah, pastries, cakes, pies. Bien? That's the difference. That's the difference. Okay. Bueno. Más ejemplos.
A mi hija y yo nos gustaba comer la cena juntos o juntas.
Bien, sí, excelente. A mi hija y yo nos gustaba comer juntas.
Sí.
Nos gustaba comer, nos gustaba cenar, igual, juntas. We used to like eating together. Bien, excelente, excelente. Quería nadar, pero no pude. I wanted to swim, but I didn't manage to.
Could not do it.
No tenía piscina. I didn't have a pool. Bien, sí, un ejemplo. ¿Ok? Bien. Otros ejemplos. Any other examples? No? Nada? Bien? Okay. Vale. ¿Alguna pregunta? Any question with that before we leave that for a bit? And if you want it to be like perfectly comfortable right now, immediately 100%, that's going to be tough. Yeah. You have to get used to it with the context of storytelling. Okay. I'm going to show you something that I had sent you before about the Disneyland, because she did a very good job of mixing. And I want to do kind of a walkthrough of that video to show you how we do a flip-flop in Spanish all the time between imperfecto and preterito. People do it without thinking because, of course, they're used to it and you're not. So it's normal. It will not be an easy flip-flop for you. I had given you a cheat sheet of here are the verbs you're going to hear during the Disneyland story. Remember that? Yeah. And look at all the flip-flops, flip-flops, flip-flops. And I was really specific in trying to pick out specific verbs. When we talk about age in the past, it's got to be imperfecto, right? When she talks about something she did a specific time, it's got to flip over into preterito category. Iba, if she's going to use that in imperfecto, it's got to mean used to or was going to, right? But the preterite form is going to flip it into that realm of event. We went, we did this once. Okay. Okay. Bien. I have given you that. Let's do a quick little run through. So I can do a running commentary. The Puss in Boots example was the kind of thing where they give you the English underneath, so you see right away, yeah, what they mean. So that makes it a little bit easier. But this story requires a little running commentary.
Llegamos a la...
Flip it back to the beginning.
Hola. Viaje, un viaje que yo hice cuando yo tenía 15 años.
When I
Cuando
was
yo
15.
tenía 15.
Now, even though you may think, wow, when I was 15, well, that was a certain year. Okay, it was. But whenever we talk about age in the past, it's got to be imperfecto because it's still a description, even though it was in her 15th year of life. Okay.
15 años. Un viaje a París.
Okay. I'm going to do a quick translation for you.
Cuando yo tenía 15 años,
When I was 15,
yo iba al instituto.
I used to go to a high school. Instituto is just a different word for colegio. Instituto is a high school.
Al instituto, a la escuela.
So by her saying iba al instituto, she says, I used to go. I was going to high school. Okay. Not she went to high school once, but she was going to this place. She was attending.
Secundaria. Y yo, este año, cuando yo tenía 15 años,
This year when I was
yo
15,
estaba en el cuarto curso.
I was in 4th year. Okay.
Cuarto año del instituto. Y todos los años, los alumnos.
And notice she used the tag todos los años. So this means repetition every year. So she's going to have to use imperfecto.
Los chicos y chicas del cuarto curso hacían un viaje.
They always used to make a trip. They always used to take a trip. Hacer un viaje is take a trip. Hacían un viaje has to go into imperfecto. Okay. Todos los años hacían un viaje. Every year they took a trip. We're talking about kind of a field trip thing, but a big one. Okay.
A París.
To
Un
Paris.
viaje a París, la capital de Francia.
Capital of France.
Mis compañeros,
My
mis
classmates
compañeros y yo
And I.
fuimos a París
fuimos a París. Now she switches from every year the kids used to take a trip to we went. Now she's talking about that one year. Fuimos, we went. An event.
una semana.
1 week.
7 días. 7 días. Una semana. Nosotros fuimos desde Algeciras,
We went from Algeciras, so she's telling you their starting point,
en el sur de España,
in the south of Spain,
hasta París,
up to
en
Paris,
el norte de Francia,
in the north of France,
en autobús.
in a bus. So it was a bus trip. And these bus trips are, of course, very common with people touring all over Europe.
Hicimos el viaje en autobús.
Hicimos el viaje. We made the trip. She's talking about the one trip. Not that the kids did it every year, but we made this trip on a bus.
Es un viaje muy largo.
It's a really
Un
long trip.
viaje en autobús de 30 horas.
It's a 30-hour trip. I don't even want to think about a field trip for 30 hours with kids. God, 15 years
30
old.
horas en autobús. 30 horas en la carretera. En el
30,
autobús
30 miles,
yo
30 hours on
estaba
the road.
muy cansada.
Estaba muy cansada. Now she's talking about how she felt. Uh-oh. Perdón. Sorry, guys. We had a Zoom hitch. I've got to get us back in. Got a data heavy glitch. Okay. So when she's talking about how I felt, being tired, that's a description. She flips back into imperfecto. Estaba cansada. I was tired.
Muy cansada porque yo no podía dormir
I couldn't sleep.
en el autobús. No podía dormir. Pero al final nosotros
At the end,
llegamos a París.
we got to
Llegamos
Paris.
a la ciudad, a París.
We got to the city.
Y yo estaba muy emocionada. Yo estaba muy contenta.
And here now she flips from we got there, preterito, to I felt. And how we feel is description. It's not an event. We got there. We arrived. It's how we felt. Emocionada, excited. Okay. Imperfecto. Imperfect because it's description, feelings.
Mis compañeros,
My classmates,
mis profesores
my teachers,
yo
and I,
nos quedamos en un hotel.
we stayed at a
en un
hotel.
hotel
an
en
event.
París.
We stayed there
Todos los días
every day.
íbamos a visitar
We went to visit.
diferentes monumentos.
Todos los días íbamos a visitar. Every day we were going to, so she's talking about repeatedly, we went out on a number of these little tours every day. Okay, visitamos, íbamos a visitar. We went to visit.
Todos los días visitábamos monumentos.
Visitábamos. We
La
visited
Torre
monuments.
Eiffel, el Arco del Triunfo,
Arc
la
of Triomphe,
Catedral de Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
París es una ciudad muy bonita, es muy bonita.
Paris is a pretty
Y
city.
mis compañeros y yo lo pasamos muy bien.
Lo pasamos muy bien. We passed it really well. This is a way that's common of saying we had a good time. Lo pasamos, preterito, preterite. She's talking about the whole trip. We passed it well. We had a good time. They use preterito. We had a good time. She's talking about the one trip.
El fin de semana, el sábado
On the weekend,
y
on
el
Saturday,
domingo, fuimos a Disneyland.
we went to Disneyland
Nosotros fuimos a Disneyland
event.
y estuvimos 2 noches
We went 2
en
nights
un hotel,
Pacific
un
at a
hotel
hotel
dentro de Disneyland.
inside
A mí
Disneyland.
me encanta Disneyland porque me encantan las montañas rusas.
I love roller coasters.
Me
I
encantan
love them.
las montañas rusas. Son muy divertidas. Pero la última noche, el domingo,
Last night,
antes de regresar a
before coming
España,
back,
antes de
before
volver
returning,
a España, la última noche,
the last night,
yo me puse muy enferma.
me puse muy enferma is a special way of saying I got sick. Now, it's kind of a description, but she's really talking, oh, here was an event. Everything was going great, going great, going great. Oh, boop, right in the middle, very last day, I got sick. Me puse enferma is a way of using ponerse with an adjective, meaning I got ill. So now she's talking about a specific evening. So it's got to go back into imperfecto. And me puse comes from poner, really weird. Poner is very irregular in preterito. But she's saying, I got sick. Preterito, event.
Yo tenía mucho dolor de barriga,
I had a
mucho
lot of
dolor de barriga. Me dolía
stomach pain.
mucho el estómago.
My
Yo
stomach hurt.
estaba vomitando.
I was
yo estaba
puking.
vomitando mucho.
Bleh.
Y me dolía mucho la barriga. Yo estaba muy preocupada
I was worried in
porque
emotion.
al día siguiente
The next day,
todos los niños,
everybody,
todo el grupo, teníamos que volver
we had to
en
we had to go
autobús
back on a
hasta
bus.
España. Teníamos
Back to
que
Spain.
volver a Algeciras. Teníamos que volver a España al día siguiente. Yo
We had to go
estaba
back the next day.
preocupada.
Wow, I
Yo
was worried.
pensaba, oh, yo estoy muy enferma y mañana tengo que viajar en autobús.
I've got to travel on a
Estaba
bus and I
muy
feel crummy.
preocupada.
I
Pero
was worried.
yo
Estaba preocupada. I was really worried. So all these emotions are descriptions, but I got sick as an event. Okay.
me fui a dormir, yo me
went
fui
to
a
sleep.
la cama y al día siguiente, a la mañana
The next
siguiente,
morning,
yo me sentía mucho mejor.
I felt lots better.
Y yo volví
Description.
con mis
Imperfecto.
compañeros en el autobús
And I went back
a
with my
España.
classmates
Y
to Spain.
ese es el
And that's it. So that's kind of the running commentary on why she flip-flopped back and forth. It depended on if she was describing or talking about something that happened on a specific date. Does that make more sense now?
Mhm.
See? So in Spanish, a person in speaking to you will purposely put one tense in to tell you, boom, it happened. And in this sequence, or they're going to talk to you about a description, what something was like, what age I was, description, how I was feeling, worried, okay? How I was feeling, my stomach was hurting a lot, right? But I got sick. I puked, boom. Okay, those are big events. So every story in Spanish is going to flip-flop between those two tenses all the time. It's almost impossible to avoid that. You cannot tell a story solely in one past tense or the other, all in imperfect, all in preterite. That doesn't happen. Bien?
Una pregunta.
Sí, dime.
They don't take a trip, they make a trip.
They do.
No take, there's no taking.
Sometimes tomar, sometimes, de vez en cuando, but hacer un viaje, to take a trip. Yeah,
Okay.
you make a trip.
make a trip.
You do
Okay.
make a trip. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting in Spanish, you make a trip. But when you make a decision, it's tomar.
You take a decision, but make a
You
trip.
take a decision, but you make a trip. I know. It's just what they use. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. A ver. Bien. Does that make a little more sense? Because you didn't have a running translation unless you turned on the subtitles. And even then it might not get you the nuances of all of that. Okay. What we haven't done yet is taken a really deep look at what is going to happen when you start to hear people telling stories in these two tenses. Well, we've looked really, really well at the ia and the aba endings of imperfecto and why they happen, because they're descriptions. They talk about how you used to feel. They're all description, habit, mental process oriented past, imperfecto, the aba and the ia. What we're going to do is take a quick look now at, wait a minute, what is going to happen with preterito? What's going to happen with preterite? How does that look different from imperfecto? And I'm going to give you a real quick lowdown cheat sheet, and it is a lowdown. It is a super nutshell. We're going to take a quick preview, because every time you get one of these stories in the past, they're going to mix those two tenses. We can't just separate them out easily. Okay. You may say, well, if we don't have the aba and the ia endings, what do we have instead? And what I'm going to show you is the regular, el pretérito regular, formas regulares. We're going to take a look at what to anticipate, what to listen for with regular preterite verbs. Now, unfortunately, there is a huge category. There are many huge categories of irregulars with preterites. So we're not even going to touch that yet. That's why we looked at the fui thing by itself last week, because fui is so common to say you went someplace. In a 15-minute conversation, you're going to hear that at least once in a normal day. But with other verbs, okay, here we go. Regular. We're going to conjugate like we always did. We take off the AR, or we take off the ER, or we take off the IR. And here are the endings. AR verbs are going to use these endings in preterito if they are a regular verb. And do you have to know which ones are regular? Well, yeah, just by practice, you'll need to know. Okay, so the ending for yo after we take off the AR of an AR verb will be e, but e with a boom, an accent mark on it. That means we punch that e sound at the end. So, por ejemplo, hablar becomes hablé. I spoke to somebody. Okay. Cocinar becomes cociné. Cociné. And you punch the e at the end more. That's why it carries an accent mark. Lleva acento, it carries that little accent there. Cociné, hablé, canté, I sang, caminé, I walked, monté en bicicleta, I rode my bike. Okay. Estudié, I studied. Those are all regular. Okay. For tú, regular AR verbs will use aste as an ending. That's kind of a long ending. Aste, aste. Okay. And notice this is the only tense where the tú form does not get an S as the very last letter, does not get an S. Here's the dirty little secret. You will hear, especially in Mexico, there are people who will put an S at the end of that. It is technically wrong, but people sometimes do it. Not other parts, not other countries that speak Latin America. I don't know why. People have explained to me this is because all the other two forms get an S, and that people out of habit put an S on the end. That makes sense to me. It's probably the reason. But If you hear people using it as astes with an S at the end, you may hear that happen, but it is technically incorrect. It should be aste. So here's what it will sound like. Hablar becomes hablaste. You talked to somebody. You spoke to somebody. Caminaste. You walked. Estudiaste. You studied. Okay. Bien. The él or ella or usted form will get an O, but with an accent mark. This is not the O of hablo, hablo, I'm talking right now, hablo, but hablo, hablo. And you have to punch that O at the end. Habló, caminó, estudió, cocinó. I cooked, or he cooked, or she cooked, right? And O with an accent mark. Amos, the same thing that you use for presente. So yay, you don't learn anything new for nosotros. And then ellos, ellas, ustedes gets aron, aron ending, aron. Okay. Cocinaron, they cooked. Caminaron, they walked. Hablaron, they spoke. They talked. That's the regular AR verbs for preterito, the event-oriented past. ER and IR are going to share endings, okay? And you're going to notice some similarities in patterns. It's just that our vowels will change. Instead of for the ending, yo gets I for the ending. So, por ejemplo, comí, I ate. Viví, I lived. Okay. Bebí, I drank. Okay. Iste, not aste, but iste for tú. Comiste, viviste, bebiste. Iste is the ending for tú. Again, the only tú tense that does not get an S at the end. For él, ella, usted, it'll be yo. Not O with the accent, but yo. I-O with an accent on the O. So, comió, vivió. All right. Bebió. They drank, or he or she drank, perdón, he or she drank. Nosotros gets not amos, but imos. Notice not emos, E-M-O-S, but imos, I-M-O-S, imos. So, comimos, we ate. Vivimos is both presente and preterito, we lived, right? Bebimos, we drank. Aprendimos, we learned. Okay, imos for an ending. We're skipping our vosotroses because those are not used in Latin America, but you can see that they take the tú form and tag an is on the end of it. That's what they do. Ellos or ellas or ustedes gets not aron with an A in it, but ieron, I-E-R-O-N. So, salud. We comieron. De nada. Comieron, they ate. Bebieron, they drank. Aprendieron, they learned. Okay. Vendieron, they sold. So these are the regular endings that you get or that you use for preterito to form regular verbs in preterito. And irregular, we're going to have to take over many weeks in many little segments. So next week, we'll listen for these. We'll listen in a story for these. I'm going to send you this little packet. This is a cheat sheet. It combines your imperfecto, only the regulars, right? Not the era, not the iba, not the three irregulars, not the veía, but the regular endings. This is just regulars. Regular for imperfecto, regular for preterito, so that you see what those conjugations are like. So when I send you a new story, to prep for next week, to listen for, I want you to start listening for when are they switching from preterito, here's what happened, boom, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 events, to descriptions. I want you to listen for that swap. and maybe have that cheat sheet of regulars up so that you can listen for that and see how they're flipping back and forth. Does that make sense? And I'll send you some little prompts that we will use. We will start to conjugate some regular verbs in Preterito. We're kind of limited in what we can do with practice because we have to stay strictly with regular verbs, and it's kind of a chore because a lot of verbs will not fall into that nice, neat, regular category. You already heard that a little bit in the school story. She said, hicimos un viaje, we took a trip. Hicimos comes from hacer, H-I-C-I-M-O-S. Oh, the imos looks okay. Hacer is an ER verb, but the H-A-C-E-R, H-A-C changes into H-I-C. That is pretty weird. So, muy irregular. There are lots of, we're going to have to stick with some very limited prompts for practicing these preterites. Make sense? See? So you'll get preterite practice to get your feet wet with that. You've had quite a bit of practice with imperfecto. Now we're going to start a little bit with the preterito, the preterite, the event-oriented thing. We'll limit it to verbs that totally are regular. So we're not going to throw you any curveballs. I may throw in one fuiste, fuimos one, okay? One or two questions with that. And then you're going to get a separate story to listen for past tense story. Make sense? Sí? Lógico? Bien? Okay. Bien. Okay. And I may throw in one with a couple things with gustar, just so you can see that difference of reaction to a one-time event in gustar in preterito. Okay. Vale, eso es todo. That's it for today. Bien? Excelente, excelente. I think that will be enough. If you got any questions during the week, send it over my way. We're good to go. Y eso es todo. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much.
Gracias.
And have a good rest of your week. See? Que lo pasen bien. Have a good time.